And good afternoon, and welcome to The Mix. Chris, how you doing today, man?
I'm hanging in there.
Yeah, you've had a
little bit of a cold.
Yeah, your voice
Spent
still.
the day in the chair yesterday.
Man.
Just trying to breathe.
Yeah,
so.
enjoying President's Day, huh?
Yeah.
Did you do anything like presidential for President's Day?
I really didn't.
Because Chris is kind of our history buff, especially when it comes to like American politics, so I didn't know if you like read the Constitution or...
No. I bought a mattress. No,
you
just
kidding. So, hey, thanks for checking us out. It is kind of funny that mattress sales are on President's Day. Who would have thought of that?
Hey, if Americans figure out a way to sell something, they will do it.
That's
and
right.
President's Day, that's the best day of all.
Over
Cars
easy.
and mattresses.
I got so many emails for so many things on sale, and I didn't
Yeah.
realize. I was like, did President's Day become the new Black Friday? Is how I felt.
That's it. There's probably a joke there about President. Never mind. We'll let it go. Thanks for checking us out as we kind of do a little bit of recap of this past weekend. Normally do this on Monday, but today we're doing it on Tuesday.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about yesterday or Sunday. Some really cool things happened, and especially the baptism that happened during the first service.
Really cool baptism. Amanda Connor got baptized. Just a great story. Someone who, admittedly said, I didn't really feel like my life was, a big enough testimony to be baptized, but then to say, you know what, that's not what this is about. This is about me saying I'm going to follow Jesus, and I've been doing it, and I want to let everybody else know that I'm doing it. So it was really cool.
And it was neat to see kind of the church and the community kind of rally around her.
Right.
Like when she came up out of the water, man, like it was raucous cheering going on. And then we actually took her picture right here. I didn't even mention this, but we have a new backdrop for the mix. Yeah, we're excited about that. So a new backdrop for the mix. Misty Smith, a church member here, really excited. She does great work. This is really, really cool. So there's so many talented people here.
We do.
But Amanda was the first picture up in front of the wall.
Yeah.
And I told her husband Sunday night, I'm like, man, she is getting so much like air on Facebook right now.
Yeah,
like it was
I know.
really, really cool.
Right.
So really cool baptism, kind of wrap up of the series. Chris, I enjoyed the series. Anything you kind of took as a takeaway for the whole thing?
Well, just overall, again, and we'll kind of get into this a little bit more later on today, but just the idea that, here's what seemingly somewhat insignificant letter that Paul writes to this individual, and that he wrote, 2,000 years ago, and how relevant it is to us today, how relevant it is to, the things that we face in society today. And it's just a powerful thing. It's a powerful message, not only about this letter, but about Scripture in general, just how, even though it was something that was inspired, hundreds of years ago, it's still relevant to us today.
Absolutely.
And it's important in our lives. And so that was really the big takeaway for me.
Really cool. I heard a lot of good feedback. Both the series so far this year, there's been a lot of feedback, but it's really cool. Some very pertinent stuff this past week. So I'm really excited. 3-week series, short letter, but a lot of content, some really, really cool things. So we do have some stuff coming up in the next couple of weeks, including a kickoff of our brand new series.
Right. We kick off a brand new series on Sunday called Four Easy Steps.
4 Easy Steps
to Wreck Your Life.
That's right.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's a little scary sounding.
And I'm actually going to use an illustration at the very beginning of the whole message on Sunday morning about how we work so hard to accumulate all the right stuff in life. And then in one moment, we add in the wrong thing. And it's so easy to add in the wrong thing.
Right.
And everything falls apart.
Right.
And so we're going to talk about 4 easy steps that we can take that would ultimately wreck our life.
Right.
So you don't want to miss any of these weeks.
And ultimately, we don't want you to wreck your life,
Right.
but we want you to avoid wrecking your life.
That's
So
right. How easy it is to fall into these traps. And then at the end, we'll kind of say, okay, now how do we safeguard against those things?
So, also this coming Sunday, big meeting. Tell us about that.
Big stuff. So this coming November, we're going to be going to Honduras, down to Tegucigalpa, Honduras. So we've been talking about this for the last several weeks, but this coming Sunday is our info meeting. Anyone that wants to go with us to Honduras, or if you're even remotely interested in going to Honduras, we'll meet immediately after the second service this coming Sunday. We'll give brief information about trip costs, passports, kind of a brief idea of what to expect. We have a lot of new people have signed up.
Right.
So to give you a full picture, here's what the trip looks like. Here's what you can expect. Deadlines, passport deadlines, all that stuff. So this is coming Sunday. It won't be a long meeting, probably 15 minutes after church on Sunday morning. But we do want to let everyone know the meeting is coming up. If you're at all even remotely interested, hang out. Again, depending on the size of the group, it's probably going to be upstairs here in the green room. But if it's a large group, we might need to meet downstairs. But right now, it looks like we'll probably be meeting up here.
Okay, cool. So we also talked about this past Sunday, but we talked about Amanda's baptism, but we also have 2 more baptism service dates coming up. We have a lot of people that are interested, that have been talking to us about being baptized, and so we wanted to provide 2 upcoming dates. One of them is actually would have been a month from this past Sunday, so it's on March 18th. So that's one possible Sunday. But then another one is also on Easter. Easter Sunday this year is on April 1st. So that's a great day. If you're going to pick a day to be baptized, it's a great day to do it. Because as we celebrate the resurrection of Jesus, what better day than to say, I'm with him, I'm following him. I'm following the guy that came out of the grave. So
definitely.
So that's also available. So if you're interested in either of those dates, let us know. By the way, mentioning Easter, not only is it on April 1st, but we're going to kind of adjust our times just slightly. It's actually going to be 9 and 11 on Easter morning instead of 9 and 10:45. So just be thinking about that as we plan ahead. Not a big deal. But
So if they want to get in contact with anybody about baptism.
Contact me.
Okay.
Chris at richpointchurch.org. And we'll get you all the details and get all that worked out.
Okay, absolutely. By the way, just as a side note, we don't really have this big announcement or anything, but we are having to change the date for our fishing tournament.
Oh, okay.
So I kind of announced that on the Facebook page earlier today. If you're interested in the fishing tournament, there's some scheduling snafus. Follow that page later on this week. We'll be updating that as to what date that might. There's going to be a later date this year.
Okay.
So.
All right, so let's get into.
Yeah, let's dig in a little
let's
bit.
kind of wrap up this series and talk just a little bit more about it. So your big idea for this past Sunday was grace has the ability to reconcile what seems irreconcilable. Just dig deep into that. Tell us, what was the point of talking about that? Because let's be honest, if we need grace, this is the world we need it in.
Yeah. Our world right there's so much conflict. There's so much vitriol and hatred towards each other.
Right.
And it affects everything. It affects our relationship with other humans. It affects our more intimate relationships. We can't be naive to think that the stuff that's happening out in our world doesn't invade our homes and affect our marital relationships or our relationships with our kids. There's just this angst in our society right now. And so because of that, a lot of times it looks like relationships, be they relationships outside the walls of our home or relationships inside of our home, it seems at some point that we just get so frustrated with each other that we throw our hands up in the air and say, that's it, I'm done, I'm out. Because it seems like the relationship itself is beyond being reconciled.
Right.
And that's why, like really, and I love this, because if you're able to focus or hear the final message of the series, if not, it'll be up on YouTube later this week, but Paul steps in and says, I care passionately about both of these men, and they're both good men. He had Philemon and the runaway slave Onesimus. And he says, I want to enter into the fray of their life. And he says, I want to show them that grace isn't just something that's out there, but grace is something that says, I'm going to enter into the fray, get messy with you, and allow a chance for there to be reconciliation. And so Paul steps in and says, if both of you are willing to surrender to what Jesus has, then grace can reconcile what seems to be irreconcilable, which is why Paul steps in and says, by the way, I'll come in as an agent of change. I'll pay the price for relationship to be restored. Like, I want to come in and literally set the example that Jesus set.
Right.
And I had someone come to me Sunday and they're like, man, just when you said that, I didn't realize, really that Paul, and I had this quote about how Paul had maybe the best human representation of the love that Christ has for us and what he did and what he said for Onesimus. And so really grace is willing to come in and do that. And there's a quote that I threw out there, because if we think we can do it ourselves, then grace doesn't work. Grace is unmerited favor.
Right.
And so Andy Stanley had this quote that says, grace is inviting to the person who's unrighteous, but it's threatening the person who's self-righteous.
Right.
if Onesimus or Philemon thought they could do it themselves, then grace comes in and it is threatening to us because it says we can't do it ourselves.
Right.
And so when we really break that down and look at marital relationships where it looks like, man, husband and wife, their differences are so irreconcilable that divorce seems the only option. Man says that's true, but God says I can do the impossible. Grace can step in, and even things that look irreconcilable can be reconciled as long as both parties allow grace to enter the fray of their life and to change them.
Well, actually, that's a good point to make, that a little bit later on this year we're going to be talking a little bit about that in the marriage context.
Yes.
Great series that's going to be coming up for that after Easter.
Yeah.
So at the the very end, you turn the corner, and you kind of you brought in, talking about what I talked about earlier, you brought in the relevance of this letter to today, dealing with basically some of the controversial things that we face even this very day. And like you said, these situations are extremely messy. I mean, that's what grace is about, is stepping into that mess. I mean, we all want black and white answers, and there aren't, to be honest. There aren't. It's messy answers. And so talk a little bit about that and what that looks like in our society.
Yeah, absolutely. See, slavery for us now is the easy one.
Yeah.
Society has deemed it unacceptable. It's not that it doesn't happen.
Right.
It happens under the cloak of human trafficking and all that, but there's no one stepping up in most countries. No one stepping up and saying, hey, this is okay, this is acceptable.
Right.
So it's easier for us to sit there and condemn slavery because we've all agreed that it's wrong. But Paul's entering into a world where there isn't that societal agreement. And so because of that, Paul's very careful to say, hey, society is figuring this out, but when I speak to you as a Christian, or I speak to you as a church leader, he doesn't come outright and say for or against this particular topic. Instead, he says, let me share ultimately that this is a hard issue. And as it's a hard issue, I want to appeal to you. And the final point of Sunday was, I want to appeal to you to do even more than I've asked. Because he's like, I'm still figuring this stuff out myself.
Right.
And Chris, what you said, the point that you made is so true, is that we have stuff we're dealing with today. And most people, most of my friends, know which side of every debate they land on. And every piece of information that they have that fits their common thread and the thread of their friends, I can succinctly state what that is. And once the situation over here that the other side has, and they have their own argument, or they have their own internet meme, because we said that internet has kind of become the society's place where we go and have our debates.
Right.
In particular, Facebook. That they have theirs, and when they make a point that's a valid point, I just dismiss it and say, well, I'm not going to comment on that because I don't really have an answer for that, so let me go find another argument to make my argument louder. And a lot of times our black and white issues are things that have nothing to do with the Bible. They're just our opinions, but we're dogmatic about our opinions. There are things we should be black and white about. Those are things we hold on to. We've talked about this often at church. There are things we hold on to with a closed fist. But those things are things I can point to chapter and verse and say, this is what God says about it. If I can't point to a chapter and verse, say, this is what God says directly about this situation, then hold those things a lot more often with an open hand. So it's not that there aren't any black and white issues, but that when it comes to something where the Bible isn't clear, then we have to be careful. And Paul writes to the church and says, I want you to do I have confidence that you're going to do even more than what I ask of you. And so we look at our controversial issues of the day. A couple of weeks ago was something else. Because of the horrific situation that happened last week, we look at it now and say the number one issue that our society, American society, is facing today is this epidemic of school shootings. And right away people jump to one side or the other. They jump to, is it a guns issue? Is it a mental health issue? Is it something else entirely, which is still very real possibility there's something else entirely, or more likely it's kind of a combination of all of this. Like all of these things have contributed to the bigger problem. And so Paul, I believe, if Paul was writing a similar letter to us today, he'd say, listen, I don't have the answer necessarily. I can't point to chapter and verse and tell you this is what you should do, this is what you shouldn't do. Instead, he appeals to what's the heart behind it. What does your faith require of you? What ought you to? And for us, as we're still kind of processing through, what's the correct answer to that? Now I have an opinion on that. I'm allowed to have an opinion on those things. And you know, we were talking about this earlier. If I shared my opinion, I'm pretty sure both sides would be mad about that opinion, which maybe that's how it needs to be.
Right.
But that when we ask the question, what does my faith require? What ought I do? It's a very different question. And so because of that, I'm not going to give the answer because I'm not sure what the answer is.
Right.
But I do know this, and I have friends on both sides of this, and so I might get both sides of them a little bit upset at me. But just being honest, if we know the Second Amendment to the Constitution, and we're not familiar with the Second Commandment from God's Word, from Exodus, then we might be missing out on what's the priority. And at the same time, if on the other side we think that if we just eliminate a certain type of gun, a certain classification of gun, that it's going to take care of all of society's ills, we're either naive or we're lying about this whole situation.
Right.
There's probably something a little bit deeper that we have to deal with. And so for both sides, the question becomes not what's convenient, not what can I get away with, but what's right. Not even what gains me the most rights, but what's the right thing for me to do.
Right.
And that's a lot messier question because it doesn't fit into one of my internet memes real quickly.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. By the way, any hate mail directed to Josh at ridgepointchurch.org.
You got the comments right now, Chad.
People are going to be like, you can share this up and say, this is what our pastors think about this. And Chris like, pastors? It was all that guy right there.
I don't know. I think you kind of quoted me in some of what
That's
you
true.
said,
That's
so.
true. I did that second commandment, Second Amendment,
yeah.
not that guy right there, chris@pointchurch.org. So there's a lot more to that. I'm not sure that we can answer it all in 10 minutes, but that's our take on it.
All right. Any questions, Josh?
Or anything we missed?
No, nothing.
All right.
Man, that never happens right there. Josh normally has something to interject.
I was going to comment about when has the mix ever been 10 minutes, but that's
I meant just that part of the discussion. I didn't mean the entire mix. I meant that part of the discussion. The mix is not 10 minutes. But we enjoy it anyway. So if there's no questions or comments from the peanut gallery, no jokes from Over Easy, Scrambled Egg, whatever it is back there. Listen, we're really glad you take time out of your day, either on Monday or Tuesday or whatever day of the week you get a chance to come back and kind of check out what we're doing at the Mix. We'll see you this coming Sunday, 9 and 10:45.